Hey friends, it looks like we've got your attention because we are talking about anxiety and how anxiety shows up for each Enneagram type. If you haven't taken a look yet, be sure to check out the 2 previous episodes where we talk about what is anxiety and how it shows up for each Enneagram type. Now, in this particular episode, we're going to be discussing what do you do? Okay, how does it showing up, and then what are you going to do about it? Is it something that always needs to be eliminated? Is it actually helpful and your body's telling you something? All of these things we take into consideration. So today we want this to be a helpful episode for you to discuss how to handle anxiety according to your type. So what exactly is it, and how does it impact each Enneagram type? And what are some ways in which each type can respond to anxiety to regulate themselves and to navigate their relationships and their professional lives with more clarity and more serenity? Well, welcome to Your Enneagram Coach, the podcast. I am Jeff McCord, co-founder and CEO, and here I'm with Adam Breckenridge, the Director of Coaching. Adam, we're glad you're here.
So good to be with you, Jeff, as always.
Now, the funny thing is, we were just talking before, you've got 2 6s talking about anxiety, which stereotypically 6s have, 6s have are supposed to have the most anxiety. And I have to say, I woke up, my body was on. I mean, it just seems like my nervous system is dealing with some fear and uncertainty. Wondering if there's anyone outside of me that's going to give me a sense of direction and solve some of the things that I'm worried about. Anxiety really does play a significant role in each type's life, and we seem to be kind of accustomed to it as 6s.
That's right. Yeah. It sounds like you're prime and ready to have a conversation about anxiety this morning. You know, I woke up in a similar way. I really did. I woke up in a similar way this morning. And I was reminded, we talked about this, a couple episodes ago, that there was an article that said that, and I'm thankful for research like this, because it reminds me that it makes me feel less lonely when I realize that you and me and my 6 friends we don't have the corner market on anxiety. Anxiety really is a human phenomenon. And we talked about this article that said that, 41% of American adults are experiencing peak stress levels for the year right now. And, the American Psychiatric Association does this annual mental health poll. And so far this year, 43% of adults say they feel more anxious than they did the previous year. The previous year, it was 37% in 2023. In 2022, it was 32% of adults. And so right now, people are particularly anxious. Current events are playing into that: economy, election, got all kinds of stuff that's going on there. But yeah, I think, Jeff, what I'm trying to say is, I feel you. When you say you wake up anxious this morning, I feel you. And, I think probably our listeners and our audience feel you too.
And it's interesting for me that I'm not sure that, well, to be honest with you, when probably 2011, I was on a sabbatical, and we actually spent some time with the marriage and family therapist who originally introduced our friends to the Enneagram back in 2001. And for years, I thought I was a type 8 because the way in which I would handle my anxiety was I would isolate and shut down. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily get frenetic. It's not something that I demonstrably show other people around me. And part of that too is I was a place kicker in college, and so learning how to just shut it all down and focus on the job and not get overwhelmed by all the things that are happening around you. Maybe that was a skill that I learned, but I remember after doing some story work, so I had done some exercises around the highs and lows of my life, and all the highs were associated with having a mentor. And the guy said, I'm not sure you're an 8. I think it seems like what you're telling me is that you're a 6. I was pissed. I was really, really angry because I didn't want to answer, or I didn't want to name my anxiety.
Yeah.
Now, a gentleman that we both follow and appreciate, Steve Cuss, the best domain name ever, Steve Cuss
I know.
Words,
Perfect.
.com. But he uses the phrase, "You've got to name it to tame it." And that's the important thing about why we're going through each of the 9 types, because not each 9 may not think of themselves as being anxious, but
Mm-hmm.
the kind of
Mm-hmm.
frenetic energy, the
Yep.
overcorrection, hypervigilance that comes from each of the types.
Uh-huh.
Like if Jeff goes quiet, he's trying to shut it down.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've got a cold, little infection, so I might cough every once in a while. But Adam, I mean, what do you think? Why are we so afraid to admit to our anxiety?
Well, I think the greatest fear of all is to be vulnerable. And nothing puts you in touch with your vulnerability like admitting your anxiety. I mean, your anxiety is pointing to your neediness, your vulnerability, your limitations, your weaknesses. It humanizes you is what it does, and I think we don't want to be human, not in that way, not in a vulnerable. And that's that old C.S. Lewis line, right, where he's like, to love anything is to be vulnerable, and that's our greatest fear in life, is
See,
to be
that's
vulnerable.
really interesting. Yeah, we have a lot of ambivalence towards our humanity and limitations.
Hmm.
Steve talks about being rightly sized humans.
That's
But
right.
one, we can't treat our limitations and weaknesses with contempt to deny them, and
Uh-huh.
nor can we overcorrect and try to be superhuman and to be able to work hard enough with whatever our Enneagram type strategies may be to actually be superhuman and to eliminate
Hmm.
our neediness.
That's right.
But
That's right.
tons of ambivalence towards this. And
That's right.
sadly, we're coming into the holiday season, and so for many of us, we're going to be with our families. Our family had a relationship with our anxiety. And our type it's been impacted, nuanced by how our needs were related to by our caregivers growing up. And so for many of us, we chose these paths because as kids, they were the most reasonable paths to deal with our anxiety. But in our adulthood, we start to find that actually causes problems for us
That's right.
personally, in our relationships, in our professional lives, in our spiritual communities,
Hmm.
where this overcompensation has started to bear its fruit.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's interesting because the pathway to relationship is vulnerability. When you have an ambivalence, or at best an ambivalence, at worst a shame toward your vulnerability, like
Mm-hmm.
if you despise your humanness, your limitations, you despise your neediness, um, you take yourself out of vulnerability, which means you take yourself out of relationship. And so a lot of times we wonder, why are my relationships struggling? Why do I feel so disconnected from myself? Why do I feel so isolated from God or whatever?
Yeah.
And it happens when we take ourselves out of vulnerability. Therefore, kind of going back to something we've said in previous episodes, your anxiety is not just a thing that's wrong with you that needs to be fixed. If viewed rightly, it's actually an invitation into being known, being seen, being vulnerable, and therefore it's an invitation into relationship.
It's interesting when I think of the verses in the Bible that talk about fear, about not fearing. Um, I typically read them through the lens of shame. Do
Yeah,
not fear. Well,
that's right.
that's just not going to be a reality for me. I'm going to fear. Um, but there's always the invitation for I'm with you. Cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you.
That's right.
Um,
That's right. That's right.
I mean, what's the Philippians 4? Uh, that
Oh,
yeah, gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting the
you're talking
passage.
about the you're talking about
Yeah,
you're talking about the peace of God that
yeah,
surpasses all understanding.
that's right. I'm trying to combine in my head Philippians 2, do nothing out of
Be
selfish ambition or vain conceit,
Yeah,
but that's not what I'm looking for. Um,
yeah. Philippians 4 is the whole like be anxious about nothing.
There you go. That's it.
Uh, yeah,
But in
but then he
prayer and
goes on.
petition, present your request
Yeah,
to God. And the peace
yeah.
of
And
God, which
what do you?
transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts. And the reality is like,
Yep,
no, don't hide your anxiety in shame. Shame's actually
yeah,
the anxiety is trying to move you to
that's right.
relationship, that you
That's
need
right.
help.
That's right.
But it's
That's
hard
right.
to name that I need help. Because
Sure is.
when we have asked for help, maybe we have a history of being shamed, or when we express needs, we have guilt that comes with it. And we don't want that. We don't want rejection. We certainly don't want to face the loneliness that if we have a spouse who doesn't relate well to our neediness, or if maybe it's the dynamic of the relationship is you're not needy, so they can be needy, and they don't know what to do whenever you have a need. There's all kinds of dynamics to it that give us good reason to not experience our anxiety. Well, today we're going to talk about what to do about it. And so we're going to go through the triads. We'll start at the top of the Enneagram. So why don't we jump into type 8 first, and how they experience anxiety. Now, Adam, the reality is that we wouldn't say that eights are anxious people,
Yeah,
but if you know what to look for, they're incredibly anxious. It just looks
yeah.
very strong.
That's right. Think about it like this. So take that word strong that you just said. There's a strong response and there is a withdrawn response. So think about anxiety showing up in each Enneagram type in the form of exaggerations and diminishments. Sometimes it's going to show up in an exaggerated response. So it's bravado, it's big energy, it's doubling down on something, it's becoming more aggressive, it's becoming more perfectionistic. It has a more of aggressive attack with response to it, so it shows up in exaggerated responses. But other times it shows up in diminishments. So some Enneagram types, their anxiety shows up in their relational narcolepsy. They fall asleep, they withdraw, they retreat, they move away. Um, and so if you pay attention to the strategies and how diminished are the strategies, how exaggerated are the strategies, therein lies the anxiety. And so
It,
for a
it is
type eight,
interesting. I sometimes will reflect back to people that I feel alone with you.
mm-hmm,
Like
mm-hmm,
I don't feel like we're open with one another, that I can be open with you because you're not being open with me
right,
about what's
that's
really
right,
going on inside. And this is
that's
particularly
right,
can come across with eights because they can be so independent.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm,
they can be sort of isolated, and
mm-hmm,
at times, they're always boasting about wanting to step in and take control or have control over
mm-hmm.
the relationships in their peer groups. And that's all
Yeah,
anxiety.
that's all anxiety. Yeah, it's all anxiety because it's protecting something. And anxiety is a protector. We talked about that from Inside Out too. When the key character anxiety says, "I was just trying to protect her." So for the eight, I think there's an overcorrection response to anxiety, where you push others out of the way to get what you want. You get big, which is really a form of rage. Rage is less breaking stuff and hulking out. Rage is just a big response. Rage is I'm trying to get bigger than the fear that's inside of me. And so uh, eights will get kind of big. They become more assertive, more confrontational. And there's nothing wrong with being assertive and confrontational and being direct. Those are gifts. But I'm saying there's an exaggeration to it. They
Yeah.
become more assertive. They kind of throw their weight around. They say, you have to deal with me. And there's a certain domination that they bring into relationships. And that's an overcorrection to their anxiety. Um, a more helpful, healthy response to anxiety, which is what we're talking about in this episode, would be for the eights to practice vulnerability and the discipline of relinquishing control or the illusion of control. So I think eights feel they experience anxiety when they feel powerless and when they feel vulnerable. And so it's kind of this counter formation practice. Is how do you grow in that? Is you actually practice vulnerability.
Yeah, can you
You
imagine what
know.
that would look like? Because I'm thinking of the team coaching that I've done and presentations and workshops for various teams. And when there's an 8 in the room, can you imagine an 8 showing up one day where the team is sort of they're in a difficult or anxious moment where a project's not going well. And an 8 saying, I'm looking at this project and where it stands right now, I'm really scared. I'm scared that we're
Mm-hmm.
going to fail.
Yeah.
And I'm inclined to take it over. But I really want to make sure that I think we can all tackle this together, but we're gonna need some additional help.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
imagine what that would do for? I mean, I remember one team. They tagged their leader as your eightness, and
Yes.
it was sort of like a badge versus
Yeah.
taking that as, oh no, you're seeing the unhealthy side of me,
Mm-hmm.
and versus
Mm-hmm.
the vulnerable side of me, because
Mm-hmm.
for an 8 to move towards their anxiety so that it moves them towards people and out of isolation, and to be able to address the real fear that's in their heart is betrayal, that your
Oh yes.
loneliness,
Oh yes.
that it's going to be through vulnerability.
That's right. That's
And
right.
sometimes that's going to
And
mean passing on taking leadership and taking
that's
a
right.
responsible role.
Yep. Yep. And the eights listening to this are going to say, yeah, but, and I want to offer you this encouragement of there's a discernment to this. I mean, you don't just practice vulnerability with just anyone. There are people that will use it against you, but unfortunately, the only way forward is to put yourself in situations where you're practicing vulnerability. And Jeff, your example of an 8 leader on a team delegating and letting go of control, like letting other people drive and trusting other people to be responsible with it. That's a perfect example of kind of how this looks in everyday life, what this looks like.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, let's
shall
talk
we
about
talk
type 9.
about let's talk about type 9. Both of us are married to 9s,
We are.
so we
Beth's
have
not
nothing.
anxious at all. She's usually very calm, very serene, very wise and sober minded.
That's right. That's right.
I think I've
Yeah.
said in the previous episode, whenever I experience Beth's anxiety, I'm like, "Hey, you don't live in this hood. Like, you need to go
Yeah.
home. Get
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
my
Let let
sixth world.
let me have this one.
You can't
Yeah.
handle this down here in the sixth world of the Enneagram symbol."
That's right. That's right. Yes. And so, of course, we know our type 9s do experience anxiety. And I think an overcorrection, an unhealthy response to it is they sort of double down on their withdrawal. And so there's an escape. They're looking for the escape hatch, and usually the escape hatch is just within themselves, whereas
It's just
sevens,
disassociating.
it's
I
just
mean, it's a strong
disassociating. Yeah.
word for it, but
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
feel.
That's what it is. That's
Um,
right.
don't
That's right.
long. Just
That's right.
numb, fill, or blind yourself
That's right.
to the
That's right.
anxiety.
That's right. And that's not the best response. It doesn't
I
deal
love your
with the
kind
anxiety.
words. That's not the best
Yeah.
response you could.
I'm
It's
just
like
mindful
you're
that
talking to your wife now, like, "Hey, Carrie,
yeah, she's gonna
there are other options."
yeah, 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 she's gonna listen to this. Well, she knows because the thing that we say all the time in our house is if we don't deal with the emotion or the anxiety, it doesn't go away. It gets worse. That's
Hmm.
that's something we I mean it becomes impaired. It comes out sideways. It just gets worse. It may go to sleep, and that's its own problem. If it goes to sleep, it's sort of this sleeping dragon, and it will wake up. It will wake up,
Yeah.
and so you have to deal with the emotion and the anxiety that's underneath the surface. And so, with that in mind, a more helpful strategy for our 9s is to address the avoidance and assert your needs. You know, practice addressing your avoidance tendencies, address it head on, as you said earlier, in the words of our friend Steve, name it so you can tame it. Name your, hey, I'm engaging in inoculating activity. I'm withdrawing. I'm falling asleep again. Name those avoidance tendencies, and
It's
then
really hard for nines. At least this is what my experience has been with Beth. The reason she doesn't want to name it, particularly name it with me. So, I mean, even just yesterday, she came into, we work from home and she's on our back patio, and then I'm in my office, and she comes in and I could tell that she's pretty sad and she was overwhelmed. Well, nines don't want to be a burden to anyone. And
that's
she's
right.
got a whole host of stories where her needs were a problem in her
Mm.
family of origin. And so she learned to isolate and disassociate from very early on. And so for her to come into my office saying, I need attunement, means that I'm inconveniencing another person,
Oh
which is
man,
the last thing that a nine wants to be, is a burden to other people. They're trying to make them all happy.
I know, I know, but that's huge. I mean, you just gave us the example, because addressing avoidance, the other thing I said was asserting your needs. So for Beth to walk in your office and say, here's what I need. I mean, I need attunement. I need somebody to see me. I need someone to hear me. Um, or I need to confront you on this. Whew, that's
Yeah,
you talk about
that
step.
yeah,
You
that's
talk about
another world. That's another planet.
yeah.
Like, might as well be Mars. We're
Uh
just trying to
huh.
get to the
Uh
moon here, Adam.
huh.
We're having
Yeah.
trouble with that,
Right.
and now you're talking
Right.
about going to
Right.
Mars.
Exactly. Well, it all feels very vulnerable, and that's the thing we're talking about in this episode, is that vulnerability is the hard thing. But that's what anxiety is inviting us to do, and all of these are going to always feel counterintuitive. I mean, they're all counter formation practices. You got to go the opposite way.
Yeah, the
Usually, you
cave
got
you
to go right.
fear holds the
You
treasure
got to
you
go.
seek.
You got to go right into the
Got to go
cave,
to the
man.
cave. Hey, let's talk
Absolutely.
about type ones then.
Yeah, let's do it. So, type ones, their response to anxiety is going to often to become more perfectionistic. Like, the louder the inner critic and the more aggressive the inner critic, that's your anxiety. And
Whether
so
that
you're
shows
gonna.
up towards themselves or towards others
That's right.
or towards organizing life, so that the
That's
critic
right.
can show up in a variety of different ways. But if
Yep.
there's this fixation on getting it right and trying harder to get things right and putting the pressure on other people to join them in getting it right, that's
Yep.
anxiety.
Yes. And it harms their relationships, because it harms their working relationships, because they become micromanagers, they become perfectionistic. So there's this no tolerance for mistakes. Um, and it hurts their personal private relationships because of their intolerance of mistakes, and their refusal to hear. They can't hear other people's opinions or suggestions or thoughts, because it's my way, the right way, all the way, my way or the highway. So that's not who they really are, and it's not who they want to be. It's a part of them that is working out of anxiety. And so if they can learn to instead practice self-compassion and embrace the gift of imperfection, um, be kind to yourself. You have you have no business treating yourself worse than God would treat you. So many of my one friends are like, they'll say out of their left brain, "Oh, I know God loves me," and then they'll say with their right brain, "But I'm an idiot and I can't do anything right." And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Those two things can't live together. So you don't get to say God loves me and I'm made in His image and I'm beautiful, and I'm an idiot and I suck, and like you can't do that. So be kind to yourself. It's that Andy Kobler's try softer, um, and embrace the gift of imperfections. It's okay. Nothing in this world is perfect. There's no such thing as balance outside of mathematics. Everything is tension. What's that Leonard Cohen line? There's a crack in everything, but that's how the light gets in.
I've not heard that before. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, okay, there's a crack in everything.
Yeah.
Okay. That's true. And that's also how the light gets in. So be the light, focus on the light. Don't dismiss the cracks. It's okay. You have a gift of being a reformer.
Yeah.
We need your gift, but you can't obsess. You can't, again, exaggerations and diminishments. If you exaggerate the crack in everything, that's your anxiety.
Yeah.
If you notice and name the crack in everything, and you move toward yourself and the brokenness with kindness and compassion, that's healthy self-leadership,
Yep.
you know?
Well, let's move on to the type twos. We'll go into
Let's
the
do it,
heart
Jeff.
triad now.
Yeah. Do you want to get us going on the heart triad?
Yeah. So, you know what? Fundamentally, what's causing the anxiety for the type two is, am I loved?
Mm-hmm.
And all of the activity that comes out of that in order to secure love and for your needs to be taken care of, for you to have a reciprocal relationship with someone where you're not the only one providing and addressing other and serving other people, but that they're taking care of you as well. And so the overcorrection would be to continue to insert yourself into other people's lives, or to just busy yourself, to deaden yourself to the longing. All of those are ways of coping with the anxiety that's actually going on in your heart. And it comes to the diminishment of yourself. You know, all of these are sort of, we talked a little bit before we started about the gospel of anxiety. It's something that I picked up on in a recent cohort with Steve Cusson, that the cost of following the anxiety for the two is they end up getting burnt out. They're exhausted. And then it comes out sideways, because the resentment starts to come out, is they start blaming it on other people as to why they're so exhausted. No one's taking care of themselves. I have to do it for everybody, which pushes everybody away when they're trying to care for the two whenever they're exhausted. And so they end up with kind of this self-sabotaging behavior that creates the very fear that got them to this place in the first place.
That's right.
Now, the healthier way of dealing with need is that when you find yourself overperforming in relationships, is to actually begin to set boundaries, not necessarily on other people, but on yourself, to provide care. Even whenever there's an inclination to go and to serve and to do something, to take a step back. It's almost like I always think of Peter's response at the Last Supper. When Jesus is about to wash his feet, he says, "No, let me wash your feet." And Jesus says, "No, you have nothing with it." Like there's a certain sense where Peter needed to decline. Sure, a reasonable response when you're dealing with the Savior of the world. Yeah, you're going to want to wash his feet. Sure, true. But the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. For the two to deal with the discomfort of being served, being loved, and facing the fear that's actually driving the behavior. What's your experience of twos?
Well, I think a good example of that in an image is twos just learn how to take off the cape and put on the oxygen mask. If you find yourself needing to rescue others, needing to be there for others, needing to help others, we all want to honor you for that gift. We're all super thankful, and when we need you, you're there. You are there, but you have to take care of yourself. So it's as simple. It's not easy, but it's this simple. It's scheduling me time to recharge, to ensure your own emotional balance. It's learning how to say no, which, by the way, it's not that it's not that people are bad at saying no. Every time you say yes to something, there is an inherent no inside that yes. So if I say yes to, joining a city basketball league for, men who are age 40 to 45, I'm saying
Adam,
no
you
to
don't have
something.
the shoulders for that, by the way, if you're thinking
I don't.
about that.
No, I don't. I don't. No.
I'm not even sure you can pass the ball. You're a one-handed guy right now.
Jeff does it, just for clarity for our listeners. Jeff's not using that phrase metaphorically, like I have a small set of shoulders, so I can't carry the weight of something. He's being very literal. I have a really, really, really bad left shoulder, so I can't.
You got one arm to dribble, to pass, to shoot. I mean, you're just playing.
Yeah, there's a guy in our church who likes to. He's not being. He's kind of being tongue in cheek, but he likes to come up to me, and I feel some shame saying this, but there's a joke in there. But he likes to come up to me and say, "Adam, is there anything you can't do?" Which there's tons of things, and he knows that there's tons of things. But I always respond to him and say, Yeah, lift my left arm above my head. Like I can't do it. I can't do it. So, but that to bring it back to the twos, that's a good phrase for you. I can't do it. No, I'm unwilling to do it. And every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. You're saying no to time with someone, time with yourself, time with God, whatever. So it's as simple, not easy as learning to say no and taking time to
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah. Jeff, you want to tell us about type three?
Yeah, let's dive into type 3. Man, I am noticing, dude, my cold is, it's been lingering for over a week now, and I can tell
Sorry,
like
man.
it's shaping my voice, and I'm wanting to sniff and cough. I got all kinds of things going on. So sorry about my voice, folks, but we'll keep trying here. So for the type 3, the threes don't always look anxious. They look like they've got it
Right.
together. And that's what
Right.
they've learned since childhood as to how to deal with their anxiety is I want to look put together. And particularly when they become parents, where they're looking for their family to join them in the effort to look like they've got it together. But it's
Oh,
the
yes.
mask. And the further distance they get from the mask, or they get from their true self and buy into the mask, sadly, the more hyperactive, hypervigilant, and overcorrection is they're actually losing their sense of self and
Mm-hmm.
don't even remember what
Mm-hmm.
a true self would
Mm-hmm.
even look like. And so
Mm-hmm.
they shapeshift. They adapt to become whatever others value and admire. They're reading the room, they're reading the community. What does it look like to be successful here? Now, the strategy for the three is when you start to notice the particular image that you're trying to curate, or you start to see that your family or your friends are not joining in your effort to look good, uh, is to actually be honest with what you fear in the moment. The fear that the failure may be a possibility, that mistakes have been made. To be able to admit that you have need and that you need others in your life, and to stop putting the expectations on leaders around you or team members or family members. That's a great litmus test to know how anxious you are as a type 3. Now, the good news is that God's put in certain restraints in our lives. And so for the 3, you'll start to notice that your body, um, you'll start to experience some weariness, some burnout. You'll start to, like, the loneliness of the 3, whenever you've pushed so many people away and feeling like no one really knows you or cares about you. Well, that's some of the repercussions of what it means to live according to the mask and to
That's right.
living out the anxious life. And it comes at
That's
the
right.
expense of yourself, of being loved and
That's right.
appreciated, to be in the presence of others who will attune to you and be present with you and show you love. And that would be very
Mm-hmm.
difficult for an anxious 3 to experience.
Oh, yeah. 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 I'll jump in and say, one example of what it could look like to, practice authenticity and rest, kind of the counter formation to anxiety for the 6. For the 3 is I would prioritize relationships over accomplishments. Um, there's a saying, the quality of your life and work. So notice the word work in there. The quality of your life and work depends on the quality of your relationships. Um, I can't remember her name, something Carnes. I think she may have founded hospice, Jeff. But she
Hmm.
she wrote she wrote a little pamphlet, and I have it back here on my bookshelf. You can read it in like 10 minutes, but it's a pamphlet on how to sit with someone when they're dying. And I remember reading it as a pastor years ago, and one of the things she says in there is this human phenomenon. It's been recorded all over the world, spoken in different languages, where people on their deathbed they never say, I wish I would have accomplished more. I wish I would have worked longer. I wish I would have worked harder. The thing, top of consciousness, top of heart, pulsating in their body is relationships, relationships,
Right.
relationships. Who mattered most to you? Who do you belong with and matter to, and who belongs to you and matters to you? And so for the 3, it's realizing that you can never accomplish or achieve enough. And the thing that makes your life, the things that makes your life worth and worthy is the people right in front of you. So it's like prioritize relationships over accomplishments is going to calm your anxiety down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, let's look into the type 4. Now, for the type 4s, when I hear of the things that 4s are anxious about, number one, some 4s will be very honest about their anxiety and they kind of wear it on their sleeve and they lead with it. Others are much more private about it and they don't want to draw attention to their suffering. But with all that being said, what comes to mind for me when the 4's anxiety is online, it's the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
It's projecting onto the world that anxiety and the anxiety's interpretation of relationships or circumstances. So the Stoics wrote about it, about suffering more than is necessary, because worry, it's not even happened yet and you're already starting to suffer, but it hasn't happened. I think the reality is for the 4 that suffering before it happens,
Mm-hmm.
and hoping that maybe that if I can just plan it, if I can feel it now, it won't hurt as bad later on.
That's right.
I'll be able to face the disappointment in the future, that really no one's going to be there for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reality is that rarely are those projections true.
Mm-hmm.
And it puts people in a negative spot, because there's no way that they're going to come through for you, because you've already pigeonholed them on what you think they believe about you. So you've just projected your own lies about who you are onto them. But when a 4's heart is at rest and they practice gratitude and they start to get some emotional equanimity, emotional balance.
Yeah.
So we're not entertaining the fanciful dreams about how people may or may not love us, may or may not receive us, or act according to our desires. When we start to accept life and reality on life and reality's terms, they start to experience more emotional sobriety.
That's right.
So part of this is just, simple practices like just practicing gratitude, that rather than allowing yourself to fantasize about these relationships or experiences, to actually put it down on paper and start writing out what is it that you're actually grateful for. How are people in reality showing up for you to help that part of your heart that needs to hear that you're okay, that you are accepted.
Yeah, look up the neuroscience of gratitude and the studies that have been done by Cindy Stellar on anxiety and gratitude cannot coexist in the brain. It's interesting where anxiety and gratitude lives, and I'm off my skis here, so I'm not a neuroscientist, but I do know how to read, so I'm regurgitating what I've read, but that they exist in the same neurocenters, and so it's really hard for them to live together. So that anxiety, that feeling of something's missing, that gnawing, anxious feeling of I'm inadequate and something's missing. The gratitude journal and the practice of gratitude, it's not reframing. It's not inauthentic. It's not the power of positive thinking even.
Right.
It's just actually the discipline of gratitude. And that alone will combat the emotional spiraling and falling deeper and deeper into the anxiety.
Yeah. It's scarcity.
That's right.
There's not enough. And
That's right.
all types will deal with that idea of scarcity. And gratitude reminds us, no, there are these small gifts that morsels along the way.
That's
to
right.
remind us of God's care.
That's right.
Well, we've got 5, 6, and 7s left to go here, Adam. So let's dive in.
Let's do it. Yeah. So for 5s, the overreaction to anxiety is you may see yourself going deeper into your mind, spending more time, withdrawn, more time learning, thinking, problem solving. You become more detached from reality, and so that's what you might notice. That would be an overcorrection. Again, some solitude is necessary and helpful, but if you're going into full blown isolation and withdrawal, that's an exaggerated response, and that would be an anxious reaction. So a strategy is to set limits on your isolation, which again, it's always going to feel like going into the cave and doing the thing that feels hard, the upstream practice. But if you can maintain small but meaningful relationships and social connections, even in the midst of your solitude, you're gonna help yourself from falling deeper into the emotional withdrawal and the anxiety. In addition to that, I think grounding activities for the five, like breath work, meditation, those kinds of things help them reconnect with the present moment and it's interesting, get back in their body. And so what fives do to survive is they go out of their body. We all are going out of our body. We all have escapist, strategies to get outside of our body, and the anxiety that's there. But they do it by going into their heads. And so the breath work, meditation, those kinds of practices bring you back into your body so that you can heal what is the anxiety within, rather than be controlled by it and live reacting to it. So,
It's
Jeff,
interesting,
you have any
Adam.
thoughts?
I've got a very strong five part to my heart. And uh, for a while now, I've been walking, and I'll walk for most days. I walk about an hour each morning. But I've stopped listening to books.
Mm,
And it's not that listening to books is bad. It's a great habit to be in and constantly learning. But I would realize that I would bring anxiety to it. And that
oh
would
yeah.
translate into this kind of hyper focus or overperforming in our organization of wanting to bring change or insight into something. But whenever I transition to listening to music, and one of my favorite ones to listen to is a band called, I think it's Mute, Muete. And we've joked about it. My family we laugh at me because of it, because it's techno marching band music from Denmark, I think.
Yeah, you
Uh,
introduced me to this band. It's incredible.
and it's super fun, but it's very rhythmic, and it's interesting because I'm much more attuned. So last October I had a heart incident, and that led to getting multiple bypass, and so I'm much more attuned to my breathing, my heart rate, the feeling of my feet hitting the pavement, even the experience of being outside for that period of time.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm much more attuned to my body.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
I will
Mhm.
say I don't walk with Beth or other people. Usually I just walk by myself. But I would imagine even for the five, that even the couple walking with a spouse or with a family member, just to get you in tune out of your head and into reality with your body and with another person, can be
Yep.
incredibly anxiety
Incredible.
reducing to feel
Oh yeah.
connected with other people and to kind of get out of trying to take care of life by yourself.
Mhm.
Now, we've
Mhm.
talked a lot about sixes already, but Adam, if we want to share a little bit more about the six world, please do so and fill us in on how it is that you have mastered your anxiety and lived the serene life.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm better at teaching this than I am doing it, and but so I don't know if I've mastered anything at this point. But I will say that there is an overcorrection response to anxiety that I've noticed in myself and in other sixes, and it's a complicated response. Sometimes it's this reaction of blind loyalty, to a person or ideology. Sometimes it's you get paralyzed by overthinking. That's an overcorrection. If you find yourself overthinking, worst case scenario, fantasizing, and you're stuck, that's you're spun out and stuck in anxiety. Or this is an interesting response, Jeff, but sometimes sixes just become rebellious, and that's like the eight. type energy. So a 1 to 1 6 might respond to their anxiety by becoming rebellious toward a person or a system. And so, that's how, the overreaction or overcorrection of a 6 can show up when they're anxious. Now, a strategy for that is focus on what's inside your control rather than what's outside of your control, and then developing self-trust and self-affirmation. You know, um, Six's anxiety often comes from this insecurity or self-doubt, and then just from the fear of the unknown. Like, I don't know, and I don't have control of what I don't know. And so, to limit that, to limit the worst case scenario thinking, you can practice. There's a healthy way to do cognitive reframing. Challenging the negative beliefs, challenging the distorted beliefs, reminding yourself of what is true, and then find someone that you trust that can hold up the mirror and look at you and say, "Hey, you can trust yourself." One of the most helpful moments I ever had in my life was, there's a mutual friend that we also have named Rich Plass. I can literally remember where I was standing in Louisville, Kentucky, when Rich put his hand on my chest. He just stuck his hand out and put his hand on my chest and said, "Adam, you can trust yourself." And for a moment, I felt like Superman. I felt like I could, now, unfortunately, I haven't stayed in that same place of confidence, but I come back to that moment often, and I remind myself, okay, I can trust myself, you know? So what about you, Jeff, as a 6? What's going on in you as we talk about the 6 and their response
One
to
of the
anxiety?
things that, because I just had this flywheel of a mind that can just go, 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 go. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm ruminating on the same things. I will find myself ruminating and coming up. I mean, we're creating a new course for people who want to use the Enneagram in relationships. I was literally half asleep planning out how to structure this particular experience and training. I don't remember what I was thinking. I just remember waking up like, what are you doing? Because I'm anxious. I'm scared about something, and my
Mm-hmm.
mind is running. Well, one of the things that's really helped me are actually written prayers, but the two that come to mind that I use the most are, one, the Serenity Prayer, and number two
Mm-hmm.
is the Lord's Prayer. So
Yeah.
there just happens to be a number of people that I'm mindful of in our neighborhood that are going through very difficult circumstances, whether it be professionally or personally, even medically for some. And so I don't know what to pray, but when I can pray, I pray the Lord's Prayer,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
because of how it's encompasses so much, even the things that I might not ordinarily be aware of. Now, I
Right.
can wax eloquently and try to form this nice and proper thing, but what gives me a sense of boundaries isn't what you were just saying, that I'm not superhuman. I don't know it all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Mm-hmm.
all the specifics to be praying for these people. So as I walk by their house, I simply just pray the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And I do
Yeah.
that with a
Yeah.
simple childlike faith. Like
Yes.
I don't know what to
Yes.
pray, but I know that when Jesus said, when you don't know what to pray, here's what to pray. Okay.
That's right. That's right. That's right. It's funny that you talk about the prayers. I have on my desk, I keep this prayer of surrender, and it's from my friends over at the Eden Project. But it says, I'll just read it. It's really short, but it says, "Blessed Trinity, grant me the grace to open up to your presence, receive what you give, release what you take, lack what you withhold, and do what you require." And I find and it just puts you in a posture of open hands.
Yeah.
And I find myself that when I'm in this posture, it's hard to stay overwhelmed by anxiety. I'm not saying the anxiety just magically goes away, but I'm saying it creates some healthy space between me and the anxious part.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, Jeff, on those prayers. It can be super helpful and grounding. Well, should we talk about 7s?
Let's round it off with type 7s.
Let's do it. We save the most fun for last. Yeah, so 7s, the overreaction response to anxiety is maybe to become a bit flighty, to just be the inability to be present. What's next? I've got to stay stimulated, and I've got to search for new people, new experiences, have more fun, stay entertained. You may find yourself lashing out, maybe even demanding that you get the satisfaction and the fun and freedom that you desire. So you don't want any kind of restraints on you. Those are all evidences of anxiety and kind of overreactions or overcorrections rather to your anxiety. Um, a more helpful strategy and a more helpful response would be to tolerate discomfort, which is really, really tough, hard to do, and practice mindfulness, practice being present. That's what I mean by mindfulness. Um, you know, the anxiety only gets kicked up and it throws gas on the fire of the anxiety to constantly seek stimulation because it's never enough. And so the more stimulation or experiences you seek, the more you want, the more the anxiety grows. And so to practice being still and being present, again, it's coming back into your body rather than escaping your body. I know that's the fear, that's the vulnerability, that's the cave. I don't want to go in there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to deal with what's in there. But that's actually the way forward, is to tolerate the moments of discomfort where you return home to yourself, get back inside your body, and face what you've lived and face the feelings you have about what you've lived and be honest about it. Um, and so, there's mindfulness apps, there's group work you can do. I would find a coach, find a therapist, find a spiritual director, someone that can help you just learn to be still and do this healthy introspection. So Jeff, what are your thoughts about a 7?
Yeah, the one thing that I'm mindful of in my relationships with sevens, that oftentimes I don't feel that they're present. They might be frenetic with something else that's going on, but there's like an over functioning, a hyper energy that they bring that I don't feel like they're there with me. Now, the sad thing is that sevens create their own loneliness because they're not sitting with people. Now, there are some types of seven that will try to avoid the negative experiences or problematic, disruptive experiences by leading the team, leading the group of friends, let's say. But the sad thing is that they're not present to them in the moment.
That's right.
And to remember that you and your peers they are the gift. They are the experience. What you're longing for is to someone to sit with you. And what they're longing for is not your great fun ideas, but just to be present, for you to be present with them. Because you have the opportunity, the strength to bring light into very difficult circumstances. But it's not this hyper energy to go and fix things and to get things done. And it's more about being at rest and having a non-anxious presence in the lives of others and experiencing that from other people.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, we hope you found these 3 episodes helpful, and in light of all the things that are going on for us culturally and personally and relationally, there's a lot of transition happening, and we hope that you come to an understanding of how your anxiety is showing up for your particular type, and that you've learned something about those around you that you're in a relationship with about how their anxiety is showing up. And so we hope you found some sense of direction. Give us some feedback. We'd love to see your comments and to help us understand, maybe even help others to understand how anxiety and what you've done about your anxiety, how it shows up in your life. So be sure to leave us some comments and be sure to like and subscribe so that you can get more content as we're planning for the holidays and the podcast coming up. If you do have questions, don't forget, you can always reach out to us at info@yourenneagramcoach.com. We'd be happy to answer your questions there. And so, Adam, thanks again for hanging out with me and talking about this. And I really do hope that people have been encouraged and have a little bit of direction on how to deal with their own anxiety in a particularly anxious season of life.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.